Hi folks, this video is brought to you by DIY Guy 123, and it's going to talk about how to diagnose a very rare condition where compressed gas and air will leak past the spark plug between the threads of the plug and the threads in the head. So the symptom was that the vehicle was running very rough, especially when accelerating. We thought that the ignition coil, one of the ignition coils might be faulty, and you can see my other videos on how to diagnose and replace those ignition coils. And what I found was the coil in this cylinder right here was not working, and then I switched these two coils and the problem moved to this cylinder, so I knew it was the coil that was faulty. So we bought a brand new coil and put it in this location, and then left the coil, the used coil that was in this location, we just left it in place. It was originally from here, got moved to there, and we left it in place and put a brand new one over here. The van worked fine for 10 minutes on the highway, and then the same symptom appeared. Very rough, shaking. And so for the diagnosis, I thought maybe the brand new coil had just failed, because I've seen new parts that only last a very short time. And that was not the case. The new coil in that cylinder worked fine. It was actually the coil that was moved into this cylinder. So that means that this cylinder, this piston, this set of valves, this part in the head, this spark plug, this electrical system caused two coils to fail in a very short period of time. So that was very peculiar, and we took the coil out and had another look at it. And I'm going to head inside now, and even better lighting and more comfort, and show you what we found. Okay, much warmer inside. So when I took the plug out, took the coil out, this is one of the original coils, and it looked okay on this side. By the way, the first one that I pulled out, when I look in there, I could see a crack in the, not in the rubber boot right around the edge, but just inside there, I could see a crack. I thought, well, this van has 300,000 kilometers, coil probably just got old. Today, when I looked at this second coil that failed, looks okay from that side, but when we flip it over, you can see quite a bit of burning. The crack wasn't there. I ripped that myself when trying to pull this apart, but you can see quite a burn mark there. And I thought, what could that have been? I don't think that looked like an electrical fire. It didn't really look to me like that's what that was. And you could actually see how the material migrated from the hole where it blew out to where my finger is. It looks like there's a layer of stuff that melted away from the hole and migrated towards where my finger is. So what could cause that? Well, I thought, gee, this is more than just a faulty coil or a faulty electrical system. And I started the engine with the coil out. You couldn't hear anything when the coil was in place, because there's a rubber gasket where my thumb is all the way around the coil. But I started the engine with this coil out, and I could hear, and when I put my hand over the hole where the spark plug was, it's a deep recessed hole in the engine, I could feel puffs of air at the top of every compression cycle. So I knew that compressed air and gas were leaking out of the combustion chamber up through that hole, and it would only, since that's the case, it would only make sense that on the highway when the engine, or anytime really when the engine's under heavy load, that compressed gas is leaking out at the worst possible time. It's at the highest pressure on combustion during the explosion. It's going to be the hottest gas, and it was leaking right into this boot area, and that's what burnt the hole in this side of the coil. So the fact that the coil failed, in fact the second one failed, this is just a symptom, and unfortunately it took two coil failures for me to be aware of this very rare and unusual condition. So we have, so I thought, what is leaking? Well, it could either be a cracked head, or maybe the center of the spark plug is blown out. I wasn't sure. So when I took the spark plug out, it was very difficult to come out. I had to just turn it a little bit at a time, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I put some penetrating fluid in there and let it soak for a bit. And eventually I got the plug out. I was worried that the threads in the head were going to come out in the plug, but they did not. The plug came out pretty clean, no threads, so no aluminum threads, so I'm happy about that. But if you look at the plug, it looks like it was ground down. It wasn't. Now what's fascinating is the outer electrode, the one that you would bend to adjust the gap, looks in very healthy condition. It's not bent. It doesn't even appear that rounded or, worn down. The electrode in the center of the porcelain is worn away. I don't know how high it should protrude, but it should be more than that. So that center electrode is worn, but these plugs could in fact be original. There's 300,000 kilometers in the van, and I don't know that I'd believe it if they were original. So the fact that that center electrode was worn down doesn't, I don't like the look of it, but that in itself is not a problem. But if you look at this spark plug being ground on the sides, you can actually see where it looks melted near the very top, like at the 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock position. You can see where the metal is almost folded down over the plug. And it obviously has melted. So what could cause that? And what could cause it in such an isolated place? The back of the plug looks great, but right here is what that looks like. So many theories. I talked with a number of friends that are quite knowledgeable. We have a number of theories on what it could be. And I've drawn out the head here. And so if we look at this being the head threads, and the piston is here, so if the spark plug is threaded properly, it's not cross-threaded, and it's properly torqued down to, let's say, 15 foot-pounds, that sealing washer does its job and seals all the compression from the combustion chamber from sliding out into the open air. It also would prevent air from being drawn in, but that's not the primary function of that seal. It's primarily to keep the combustion high and keep the combustion chamber pressure very high. However, if that spark plug was not threaded all the way, then this seal may not have completely blocked, may not have done its job, may not have sealed well. What we can have happen is maybe the spark plug wasn't turned in all the way. So it was one turn away from being fully seated, and this seat doesn't have it bottomed out, and now there's an exhaust leak, it's a leak from the combustion chamber out here. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is maybe the head had a small imperfection or a piece of dirt right there where that seal came down the last time the spark plug was installed. Perhaps the plug had a burr on it. Perhaps there was a piece of carbon that was stuck in one of these threads in the head, and when the spark plug was torqued down, the proper torque was reached, 15 foot-pounds, for example, but the plug really wasn't bottomed out against the head. And if a machine is used to do the assembly, like it probably is in a factory environment, the machine will only know that the proper torque is reached. I'm highly doubtful that it would count the number of turns and all that sort of thing. So this is how you can end up with a problem, even from the factory, when a human hand is not actually turning the spark plug. A hand may feel, hey, that's a spongy, I'm turning the spark plug and it's very spongy. It doesn't feel good seating, but a factory robot, may or may not know to do that. One way or another, this spark plug was not seated well in the head, and we were getting hot gas leaking by here. Now, when the gas leaks by, it probably took a long period of time, but over time, that hot gas, and it's very corrosive in nature too. Remember, it's not just air, it's air and fuel, maybe some of it burnt, maybe some of it unburnt, and all of the corrosive byproducts that are in exhaust. So that's what we're dealing with here. It's shooting past these threads at a very high pressure, because remember, this isn't just at the top of compression that you're worried about when you say, oh, an engine has, let's say, 1 to 200 psi of compression. We're talking at the top of the top dead center at the explosion component. So I don't know how much pressure there is when the spark ignites. So this is the area where the gas is escaping. Well, initially that was probably okay, no performance impacts, but over time, with the heat and the velocity of this flow right here, it eroded the metal in the spark plug, and that's why we see the spark plug eroded in one location. Now, there were initial discussions with my friends about, well, maybe there was a particle in here that kept banging around and kept corroding something. We don't believe that's the case, because it would have either lodged or blown out the exhaust port. And so we don't think that's the case. We also think that it's worth noting that this part of the spark plug is designed to spark, and the electrode is designed to spark, but this metal on the sides of the spark plug is not really designed to handle an arc. So a couple things. With the spark plug not seated well to the head, the spark plug won't cool as much as it was designed to cool. Additionally, we wonder if the spark, as it travels through the spark plug, the energy as it travels through the spark plug and it jumps the gap, so the proper gap it's supposed to jump, that's okay. But maybe the outer edge of the spark plug that is connected to the head, there's not supposed to be any arcing there because that's supposed to be a good fit, a good tight connection. But in this case, maybe there was additional arcing between the spark plug and the head because the spark plug wasn't seated well. So did that additional arcing contribute to the metal erosion of the plug? We don't know, and maybe the spark plug expert might know. So that proceeded to erode the spark plug so much that eventually enough hot gas could slip past here that it rapidly failed the ignition coil. Now the only concern that I have, I mean, certainly we could put a new plug in, I can blow this area out with an air compressor and clean it all, and hopefully, you know, the new spark plug seats there properly. My real concern, and this is my major concern, is that maybe the head, even though the spark plug eroded, like let's say this piece of the spark plug was eroded, maybe where the aluminum head is softer than the steel of the spark plug, maybe all this area is now eroded in the head. And I really can't tell. If I had a borescope, something with a long fiber optic camera that I could look down the long port to the spark plug hole, maybe I could tell if the head is also eroded. But my strong hope is that there are enough good threads. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 complete threads that are not damaged on the spark plug. And my hope is that there would be at least that many threads not damaged on the head. And certainly the other side of the plug and the head are undamaged. So if I can get those 4 threads to hold the spark plug steady in the hole, the rest of the threads will actually hold the plug in and hold the torque. I would not go putting a lot of force, rotational force on this plug when I'm putting it in, the new one. But if I can get it to hold 12 or 15 foot-pounds, and if I start the engine and I don't hear any exhaust gas blowing by, then I will let this go and put a new coil in place, and then with any luck the van will run for another several thousand kilometers until the whole vehicle is not worth repairing any further. So that's a little tip on something I had never seen in over 20 years of doing automotive repairs. Very unusual, and it's certainly interesting. So maybe that explanation will help some of you understand why you may be seeing that behavior on a spark plug. And also there are other names for this to make it easier for people to search. So good luck with your do-it-yourself project. And if you do find this problem, let's hope that your head threads are good and it's just the spark plug that's bad. Good luck.